congratulations on getting this documentary done. I say that because it is beyond comprehensive. It covers every facet of Chicago I would have wanted to see. But how long was it from going, we've got to do a documentary, to actually having it done and out? I couldn't tell if it started filming in like 2015.
When we finished the 50th anniversary documentary, Peter Chiavarelli, our manager, had an idea to show that we were going to keep going. We weren't going to stop at 50. So the point was to figure out how, what the content would be to get to 55, and we would have it done by that time. So there were no other real concrete plans other than that. And then, of course, there was a pandemic.
This little pandemic, a couple of membership changes, a new album. It's almost like you said, we're going to do a documentary without realizing all the story stuff was going to happen.
Right. There was no story yet because we didn't know. I mean, the story was going to be what occurred from 50 to 55.
Right.
So as it turns out, there was some pretty interesting stuff that occurred for the last 5 years. And So the first one, when did that actually come out? Was it 5 years ago?
I believe it was 5 years ago, offhand. I will fact check it when I put up the copy, but 5 years ago sounds correct.
Right. So this is 22, and 21, 20 was the pandemic, and then 19, 18. So it must have been 18, right?
Yeah.
Or 17 or 18, and then. So as Peter started filming stuff, he was Peter Pardini, that is.
Yes.
He came out on the road with us and started filming us on stage. And so I guess as a result of this, there will also be a live concert video.
From the Venetian?
From the Venetian and other parts too, because we brought in the other guys too, the newer members.
Right.
And yeah, so it was like, sort of the putting puzzle pieces together at some points too, interestingly enough.
That is a remarkable thing from my perspective about this documentary. A lot of times when you have an excellent band who had things going on in the 70s, not a lot was filmed. Like, for example, the band Big Star. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Alex Chilton's band, but there's minimal footage. In this case, it seems like there's everything. Plus, you had the prep for the Venetian residency in there. You had the actual recording of the Born for This Moment album in there, when we see the mobile recording studio. We see rehearsals, everything. So I'd have to imagine that was the biggest challenge of this documentary of, what do we use? Because we can't make this more than 2 hours.
Well, I didn't know what the time limit would be, but whatever that number was, I knew that Peter Pardini could put the story together within that structure. And so when we went out for touring in 2020, the first venue was the Venetian. And we played like 3 days, and then we traveled to California and played a couple of shows in Thousand Oaks, or one show in Thousand Oaks and one show in Arizona, I think. Then we went back for the second week at the Venetian, and during the last show, now after the third show, we were going to go to California again and play a couple more shows before we. I forget whether we were going back home for a little break or we were going on to the next leg of the tour.
Right.
But when we got to the third night of the Venetian, this stuff the pandemic had started, and everyone was trying to figure out how long that was going to be. And we figured, we'll be off for a week, we'll be off for a couple of days, we'll go right back to work. And but as soon as we finished that last show in Las Vegas, they shut down the world.
Yeah.
We thought it was they just shut down California. California's weird anyway, right? California and New York are always the ones that do
Yeah.
something first. Right?
Well,
We figured it wouldn't be all that long, and as it turned out, we kept waiting week after week, and the shows kept getting pushed further back in the year.
mhm.
And it took 15 months off before we were able to go back to work again. So within that 15 months, we had to figure out what to do with our lives,
Yeah.
because we were all at our homes, which we hadn't been for that long in forever.
Yeah, that's one of the beginning parts of the documentary where current members of your group are going, I didn't realize that they never stopped touring. The only two bands that I could think of, actually, I can only think of three bands that never stopped touring, and it's really Chicago, Cheap Trick, and the Beach Boys. Everyone else takes breaks.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't take it every year we play. And even during the pandemic years, we ended up playing. We played at the beginning of 2020, and
Mhm.
we started back somewhere in the middle to maybe in of 2021.
Right.
So we still played consecutive years. The only thing that got sort of weird was 2 summers. The summer got cut out because everyone was wearing masks and figuring out to do what to do with their lives, and which was the creation of Zoom as
Yeah.
well. I mean, that didn't exist before. We were going, what is Zoom?
It did exist, but it was very rare. When I was doing junkets before 2020, very rarely was it video based, but it did become kind of the norm. And it's still the norm for like 80% of interviews, I'd say, at this point in time. I'd have to imagine that took getting used to, always having to look beautiful for the camera.
Yeah, have some sort of stage presence. Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing that has been created. Everybody who does an interview now becomes the director, producer, light man.
Yeah.
Set up, how it's going to look behind you. Oh, what is that behind you? Oh my God! Can you move over to the right a little bit? So it's like we used to just to the phone, and they would ask us question, we'd answer them. Okay, great. Do you have enough? Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye. Bang, we're done. This is a completely new ballgame.
Yeah, I'm empathetic towards what you have to deal with because it used to be that you perform the 90 minutes to 2 hours on stage, and the rest of the day you could kind of be yourself. And now with everyone filming the concert on their phone and then the Zoom-based interviews, becoming a performer, being a performer rather, is closer to a 24/7 job now than it ever was.
That's true. And even on TV, interviews on TV, it goes from this pristine studio shots of all the talent there,
Right.
and go to the person that they're interviewing, and he's in his house.
Right.
And whatever type of internet he has is what you're going to see. So it's going to be grainy, but it's not going to be HD by any means.
Well, what is HD is the documentary that you have put out.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So we try to do the best that we possibly can with what we have. And because when we were traveling early on, we didn't film anything either. We didn't have a camera. I didn't buy a camera until 2010 when we met Peter Pardini. 2010, I bought the first camera, and I had the crazy idea that I was going to be able to do behind the scenes of our Christmas album that we were recording at that time with Phil Ramone.
Yeah.
And I bought 2 cameras that I could set up with what do you call it? MIDI, not MIDI. The
Pro Tools?
Avid
Pro Tools or
no, but where both cameras would know exactly where they are.
Oh, got it. The geostamp stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would rove around with one of the cameras, and the other one would be static. It took me maybe a half of one day to realize that I wasn't going to be able to film the behind the scenes, edit it, record the album, write, sing, play, all of the other stuff that goes into the making of an album. There's no way I was going to be able to do that. So the guy that was with us at the time, Lou Pardini, said my nephew just graduated from film school. He might want to do it. So I gave him a call, and he came out, and he's been with us ever since. And we have lots of projects as a result of that. And when we record it, I take it to my studio. We mix, master, and get it all ready. Peter does the mix, the editing for all of the movie shots. So he does all the setup for that stuff. And we have a little one-stop shop.
In-house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another great thing about the documentary is the voiceover from Joe Mantegna. And I had the pleasure of interviewing Joe like a year ago. I think I actually taped it from the Venetian from my hotel room, which is a small world thing of it. It was a junket for a show he did on Amazon. And I jokingly asked Joe a question about Van Halen because I'm writing a book about David Lee Roth. Right. And I expected him to go, ha, that's funny. And he turned out to be friends with Eddie Van Halen, which I didn't know. Now seeing that he's narrating your documentary, is Joe Mantegna secretly the biggest fan of rock we don't know about?
He loves music, that's for sure. He loves that he's able to work so consistently through the years because he's been around forever. We met Joe back in Chicago when we first started. We were doing clubs, and as we started performing original music, the owners of the club fired us. They either said, stop playing those songs or you're fired. So we, young kids, smart ass kids, we persisted anyway and played the songs. They fired us, and they would, Joe was with a band called the Apocryphals, and he played bass. So they would come, they would get the call, come in and play the rest of the night, 3-4 hours or whatever it was, after they fired us. And they were going, how you guys doing? What's going on? And, we said, well, we got fired, and now they need to make up the rest of it, have somebody playing for the rest of the night. And they said, well, what happened? And we said, well, we were playing some original stuff. We weren't playing the top 40, which was what you needed to do to keep the job back then. And they would say, okay, well, see you later. We'll take over from here. And after we left, they were going, why the hell won't they play the songs? What is it that they don't want to work or what? I mean, they don't want to have a career. And as it turned out, our career lasted pretty long.
Yes.
We still have no idea how long it's going to be.
Well, when I saw you guys a couple months ago at Jones Beach with Brian Wilson, in no way did that feel like that was a farewell tour or the second to last tour or anything like that. You saw a band that was firing on all cylinders, that wasn't just relying on one era of the catalog, because we do get the late 60s and 70s stuff. We get the 80s ballads. You did If This Is Goodbye in there, which came out in 2022. So, to your credit, you've kept Chicago classic yet modern.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And the questions that come after If This Is Goodbye, I thought that the album should be titled If This Is Goodbye, because it would have created a whole new genre of questions. Are you guys quitting? Well, no, we'll be out next year. No, don't worry about it. It was a song. Like a movie's a movie. I am not that person. That's my character.
Yeah.
Right. This is a song on our record, and you can read whatever you want into it.
Well, speaking of movies, something I've always wanted to know is the Larry David movie Clear History. Chicago factors into the storyline just a bit. Did you have a heads up that was going to be happening before it came out?
Well, we knew that we were going to be in it. That's all we knew. And if you followed Larry David, you know that he writes on the spot. They turn the camera on. He will make up an idea of a sketch. Okay. And now we're going to stand over here. Yeah. And you're going to say that. And we do it a few times. And that's it. Okay, cut. We got what we need. Move to the next thing. But we had no idea what it was going to be, and that it was going to have anything to do with 20 years previous.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I know her.
Well, the kind of the opposite of one of my wife's favorite movies is Little Nicky, and Chicago factors into that in a different way. That one, right. I'm assuming you knew about months before.
Yes. We didn't know what was going to come of it. We just knew they were going to use the song.
Got it.
And they did, right? So they put it in however they wanted to write it in. That's never our what they need us for. They just need us for the music. Thank you.
License cleared. And around that same time, I'd interviewed the rapper Flavor Flav from Public Enemy, and he said he'd done some recording with members of Chicago, but that album never seemed to have come out. Were you one of those people he recorded with?
I was not, and I'm not sure who he did it with.
Oh.
I'm not, and I'm not sure how long it took, and I've always wondered how heavy that clock is.
That is a great question, because he did play basketball with it on MTV. But hey, back to you.
No, he must have had it taped to his chest or something.
Not my problem. That's above my pay grade.
That's right.
But I'm curious about you, because we did see some of the documentary at the Jones Beach show. Between sets, you're playing the part that was focused on Born for This Moment, and we saw that at your home studio, that kind of a thing. Right. What do you do when you're not busy with Chicago, keeping in mind that you're always seemingly busy with Chicago?
Well, there was a spot in the documentary where you saw Robot Love. I don't know if that's going to be Chicago or just me or someone else, but we have Robot Love, and we have the idea for a cartoon, and it's in development. I think it's pretty close to being done, but still something else needs to be done, and I'm not quite sure what. That was just one of the things that we were doing in the process of the time off. And also, when the pandemic started, I was just building the studio then, and we were working on Carnegie Hall. The Warner Rhino asked us, me and Tim Jessup, my engineer, to mix and master all 8 shows, because we played 6 days, 8 shows in 1971 at Carnegie Hall, with first time that had ever been done, and we sold it out every night. And for us, it was just another gig. It was like the Venetian or something. We come in, play 3 shows, and move on to the next gig. That's what Carnegie Hall was. But the difference with this one, we knew it was going to be a live concert. So we were constantly thinking of, there's 2 microphones up there. This is weird. We knew something else was going on and was taking our mind off of what we were doing. And we thought that we hadn't played that well. Well, when I started tearing this thing apart and restoring it to actually being able to hear the notes, because there's so much ambience in Carnegie Hall, it's built for classical music, Classical concert venues do not like loud amplified music. You can probably still hear some of the notes now if you walk in. They're just about faded out now.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had to take, first of all, noise off of 41 tapes. The tapes were all made digitally into a digital form, and then sent to us. And one at a time, we went and took 60 cycle hums out and all this other noise. And then all of a sudden, hey, you hear notes in there? And so we were able to then get down to the note value and take as much ambient still from that as we could possibly get. By the editing is you fade out of one note and then delete everything up to the next note and fade into that note. So by the time it's all said and done, you just hear the note. You don't hear that it's being faded in and out, because there's still plenty of ambience left by the time you mix. And but with the drums and guitar amplifiers and all of that stuff. And it was a lot of fun. It took 10 months, so I was busy the whole time. In the midst of that, Robert said, "Hey, let's record a Chicago album." And little did we know, he already had 15, 17 songs written. You think he might have had a head start on us?
A little bit.
Yeah, we weren't thinking of recording at that time, so everybody had to do a bit of catch up just to be involved with the record. And the record turned out good. It's just the most bizarre record we have ever done. And because we weren't in the same room with each other, you're usually able to discuss parts, work something out over here. It was very, very difficult to communicate. So it was mainly a songwriter's album, I guess, right? Because they were writing and sending it to another guy to play their part on, and sort of a puzzle piece recording.
Well, the last thing I'm going to ask you before I let you go is, what I'm hearing from this conversation is you're not just the guy on stage with the charisma that's performing. You're also apparently an archivist for the band. You're also dealing with future projects. There was video interest on your end. It seems like you do a lot. Have you always been in that role where you've been a multitasker within Chicago, not just the guy performing on stage?
It grew over the years. It just sort of fell into my lap because basically no one else would do it or wanted to. So, hey, I'll do that. Let's see if I can. And then, it's a learning process all the way through. So it's a lot of fun. Keeps me busy.
Can teach an old dog new tricks. That's what we're learning.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, I can't bark. No barking.
Paltrocast.